Welcome to Technocracy News and Trends. Patrick Wood here, Editor-in-Chief, and sometimes Chief Cook and Bottle Washer. I have to wear a lot of hats around here, as you might imagine, but I love doing these broadcasts to communicate with you things that I've learned and important things that need to be said. There's an old maxim that I've used frequently over the years, and I'm sure that somebody's going to roll their eyes when I say it, but you cannot know what you do not know. And I get a lot of emails, a lot of people communicating with me that clearly do not know what's going on. They think they understand something about technocracy, but they really don't. And they just don't have a clue. But I tell them, if you do a little reading, listen to some interviews that I've done perhaps, and read some of my material, some of my books, whatever, you'll find out what it's all about, and you can go forward to that. Well, there's a maxim, there's a corollary to you cannot know what you do not know, and that is, you cannot fight an enemy that you cannot see. You cannot hit the target that you cannot see. If we're ever going to have any pushback against these technocrats around the world, it's going to be because they are finally, clearly recognized as being the ones who need to be dispatched. And when I be dispatched, I don't mean killed or anything like that. What I mean is they need to be run out of the public policy arena. Because by and large, a lot of these people, I believe, are just stark, raving melomaniacs who just can't get the control of the world out of their mind. It reminds you a little bit of the cartoon, social cartoon back in the 90s called Pinky and the Brain. If you've never watched Pinky and the Brain, you go to Netflix or somewhere and look it up. You might have to pay for it. But you'll find out what it is when somebody has on their mind every single day how they're going to conquer the world and subject the world to their own will. Well, this is technocracy. And we're going to cover a couple articles today, and I want you to see these articles for what they are. We're going to talk about Anthony Fauci again. He's just one of the most visible people. It's in the news constantly, even though he's been kind of run out of the White House as an official advisor. He still is opening his mouth, and he has a big platform to speak from. And he still has quite a bit of influence in our nation. So in this particular article, it's titled, Fauci Looks to the UN, that's the United Nations, to rebuild the infrastructure of human existence. Can you imagine an ego so large? Now, you know, he's stepping outside of the medical field, isn't he? It used to be he just was concerned, he told us, about the medical stuff, about vaccines, about saving lives and stuff like that. But that's not enough for him. It's too small. He wants to rebuild the infrastructure of human existence. Wow, this is like a bigger thing than you ever heard. How could somebody propose the rebuilding of the infrastructure of human existence? Well, this paper he wrote with another scholar says exactly this. And I want to show you the paper I'm going to draw from here. This is what it looks like. It's called Emerging Pandemic Diseases, How We Got to COVID-19. Now, the Cell is a leading journal, usually for containing medical publications. In this case, it goes a little bit further because it's pandering to the United Nations. And so the article, or the paper, was written by Anthony Fauci, co-authored, and also David Morans. Now, the fact that Fauci's name on it is as a co-author means that every single word is just as much his as it is the other authors. So don't start carping and say, well, did he write this paragraph or did he write some other paragraph and maybe that's not what he really said. He would not have put his name on it if he didn't fully believe it, even if he did not personally write these words. But here's my comments at the top of this article that I want you to see. Dr. Anthony Fauci is a United Nations wolf in sheep's clothing, telling America why it is so important to save lives from the dreaded COVID-19 virus while pandering for the most radical parts of the United Nations agenda for the world. That is sustainable development, aka technocracy. In his paper, which I just showed you, called Emerging Pandemic Diseases, How We Got to COVID-19, he wrote the following paragraph. Now this is just amazing. We'll pick it apart a little bit. Living in greater harmony with nature will require changes in human behavior, social engineering, a primary goal of technocracy. Changes in human behavior, as well as other radical changes, mind you, that may take decades to achieve. This is a long-term program. Rebuilding the infrastructures of human existence. Wow. From cities to homes to workplaces to water and sewer systems to recreational and gathering venues. In such a transformation, we will need to prioritize changes in those human behaviors that constitute risks for the emergence of infectious diseases. Chief among them are reducing crowding at home, work, and in public places, as well as minimizing environmental perturbations such as deforestation, intense urbanization, and intensive animal farming. Well, there you go. The beef industry is under attack again. Got to get rid of those evil cattlemen and get rid of those gas-producing animals that they call cattle that grow out there on the range. Equally important, he says, are ending global poverty, improving sanitation and hygiene, wash your hands, and reducing unsafe exposure to animals so that potential human pathogens have limited opportunities for contact. This is plain evidence, I wrote, that Fauci is an agent for the United Nations and that he is a self-professed social engineer who wants to rebuild the infrastructure of human existence. Why should Fauci's phony propaganda be so hard for America to understand? Well, it's because technocrats have created and leveraged fear to the whole world, making populations wide open to their suggestions, including the suggestions that they are not saying what they really mean. And people believe it. That's how Fauci can say one month, nobody should wear face mask, and next month he says, everybody needs to wear face mask. How can you have both things at the same time? Well, you can't. But to a technocrat, it doesn't matter. This article, which is a very good article, I'd encourage you to read the whole thing, really gives you a snapshot of where Fauci's head is in this. He wants to control the whole world. This is a technocrat dream since the 1930s, and it's never gone away. Anybody in science and engineering that gets infected with this dream, and I call it an infection because it's like a virus of the mind. Whenever a scientist or engineer gets infected with this mental virus, they all of a sudden have this idea that they are qualified and mandated to change the whole world. All of human behavior, all of human activity. Well, excuse me, nobody asked them to come on the stage in the first place to do this, and yet this is exactly what technocrats around the world are up to doing right now. You look at Klaus Schwab, which we're going to look at next, of the World Economic Forum. These are all the bigwigs, the global elite all around the world, represented by the giant corporations like Siemens and IBM and GE and so on. These companies are in it to completely do whatever the United Nations says to do with sustainable development. In fact, they're funding it, they're behind it. And so here we have all of the economic structure of the world up for grabs. According to the Great Reset principle, we have people like Anthony Fauci running around saying that they want to, believe it or not, put his picture up again, rebuild the infrastructure of human existence. I will say to him and to you right now, get lost, Anthony Fauci. You have no business suggesting any such program to rebuild the infrastructure of human existence. It's working just fine without you. We don't need you. We don't want you. You have no credentials to do what you're doing, to say such a thing. Absolutely none. So get lost. That's what America needs to tell people like Anthony Fauci. get lost. You are nuttier than a Christmas fruitcake, and you do not belong in a position of implementing public policies that will rip the world apart, not put it back together. So my next story is going to kind of underscore this. The title of the story is World Economic Forum's Techno-Totalitarian Roadmap. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's many new authors and writers and researchers around the world writing about technocracy. I've been carrying some stories in the pages of Technocracy News and Trends from Stephen Guinness out of the UK, for instance, who's taken it his mission to understand not only the World Economic Forum, but also the Trilateral Commission, and he does understand it. I expect somewhere along the way he's read my book that I co-authored with Anthony Sutton called Trilaterals Over Washington. We wrote 2 volumes of that book. He probably has seen it, but in any case, he's writing great stuff. And he understands some flavor of technocracy as well. Another writer that hails from Sweden and who has become a good friend of Technocracy News and Trends, a contributing editor, if you will, is named Jacob Nordengard. And Jacob is a PhD from Sweden, and he understands the global elite. He understands the whole Trilateral Commission business. He understands the United Nations. He understands technocracy. He understands the World Economic Forum. And he's writing from yet a different perspective from Sweden. So you have the United States, me, writing about technocracy. You have Stephen Guinness in the United Kingdom, and you have Jacob Nordengard from another perspective in Sweden. And guess what? We basically are all saying exactly the same thing. The clear and present danger before us right now is technocracy. It's not the political upheaval, it's technocracy. Now, the fact that the political system is being disassembled is no surprise, because technocrats don't want any political system. They want simply to control everything from an economic point of view by algorithm. This is what they set about to do. But I wrote in this article at the top of it, just to introduce it, global elite technocrats cannot fathom how there could be anybody or any blowback against their totalitarian dreams of utopia. Those who do resist, that would be me, are viewed as an expendable nuisance and too ignorant to know what is good for themselves. Now, I doubt that describes you either. I hope it doesn't. And by the way, if you agree with me, you can leave a thumbs up on this video right now. If you disagree, I'll know where you're coming from for sure. If you think you are just too ignorant to know what's good for you, and that you need to listen to people like Anthony Fauci or Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, then all I can say to you is you will get what you think you deserve, and you won't like it in the end, I promise. So Jacob takes out in this article, in any case, he says the corona crisis is the trigger for a global coup d'etat of monumental dimensions. Now, how many people have said this recently? I said it first back in April when I first started writing about the coronavirus, that this was technocracy's coup d'etat. Jacob is saying the same thing. It is the beginning of a new era, he writes, with a new international economic order, that's straight out of the language of the Trilateral Commission from 1973, that risks completely destroying human freedoms. Can you understand that? Completely destroying human freedoms. Tyrants have now taken over to forcibly steer us into a climate-smart and healthy world through the World Economic Forum's new techno-totalitarian roadmap, the Great Reset. Now, I think this is probably the 3rd video where I've talked about the Great Reset. I cannot talk enough about it because it's the only game in town right now. And the global elite have put all their chips on the table now. They know they have the winning hand. Well, they think they do. They think they have the winning hand. So they put all their chips on the table, saying basically, okay, we are all in now. We got no more bets in reserve. We're putting everything on the table. So Jacob goes on and he describes what's going on here. He says, the aim of the partnership is to accelerate, listen to this, UN Sustainability Agenda, here it is right here, and the 17 global targets, that would be the Sustainable Development Goals that came out of the New Urban Agenda, or the Agenda 2030, back a few years ago. Here's the quote directly from the website. Meeting the Sustainable Development Goals is essential for the future of humanity. Sounds kind of like what Anthony Fauci wants to do, doesn't it? The World Economic Forum is committed to supporting this effort and working with the United Nations to build a more prosperous and equitable future. Equitable for you and me? I don't think so. Equitable for them? Sure. They're going to get all the marbles in the game before it's done. That's what they think. That's what they're doing. He says the agreement also states that the world economic's fourth industrial revolution is an important component in implementing the agenda. Digitization is seen as the key. And of course, this is a hallmark of technocracy. Digitizing everything, down to the gnat's whisker, if they could. Actually, down to your DNA structure, if they could. They're after that right now. And by the way, for all of you who have been tested, I hope that's not everybody, but if you got tested for COVID-19, you know they took a swab, maybe in your nose, maybe saliva, whatever, but they got some bio data from you when they did that. You gave them everything that they need to have to make a DNA fingerprint of you. I don't know if that happened in every case. My guess is it has happened in some cases. And so somebody in the government is building a DNA database that has all this information on everybody. And that's just ducky. But I digress. He says, by declaring COVID-19 as a pandemic on March 11, the World Health Organization opened up an opportunity window for the World Economic Forum to quickly implement its new world order. Everything was very carefully prepared. And the story goes on. I'm just going to tease you with that, carefully prepared. Jacob brings this out just great. He's a great writer, a very bright guy. He's a young guy too, by the way. So he has a different perspective from age versus youth, but he's looking at this, he says, there's a rat in the woodpile. And he's described it very well. I encourage you to go and read Jacob's article in full. You just need to understand and digest this so that nobody can say to you, you cannot know what you do not know. Once you see this, you're accountable to it. Once you see it, it changes everything in your worldview. And it doesn't matter, by the way, if you are a Christian with a Christian worldview, or maybe you have some other type of worldview. It will change the way you look at the world. So I encourage you to read it. And of course, I encourage you to read everything you can, including my books on technocracy. There's just no substitute for reading the detailed information that's out there, and I encourage you to do so. But I want to leave you with this, that you can know what you do know. That's kind of another oxymoron, isn't it? You can know what you do know. And it's not hard to know. It just takes open eyeballs, a slightly open mind, not so much that your brains fall out, but just an open mind to think outside of the left-right paradigm, to think outside of the political fights that are going on in the country, to put BLM and Antifa on the side table for a while and don't think about them either. But look at the bigger picture. Look at the people that are affecting policy around the entire planet. And who has the power to shut down the global economic system? They have, and it's still shut down. Who has that power except technocrats working in collusion with each other around the world, thanks to the United Nations? This is a global thing that's going on here, not just local. It's not a Democrat-Republican issue, I promise you. Otherwise, I mean, what, can you blame the Democrats for what's going on in Europe or Africa or India or Asia? No, you can't. They have nothing to do with it. Can you blame the Republicans? Maybe you don't like Republicans. Can you blame them? Are they the ones that are doing it? No, not even remotely close. This is a global program. And these people are manipulating every nation on earth right now to usher the world into a new economic system called technocracy. Well, I'm Patrick Wood for Technocracy News and Trends. I just want to leave you with this thought now. If you like this video, would you please give it a thumbs up? And why not subscribe? If you get notices and stuff, if you subscribe to the channel, be my guest and tell others about it too. Send out some emails, make some phone calls, whatever. You can find the channel, of course, on YouTube as /Technocracy News Trends. But you can also subscribe to the podcast, which sometimes is occasional, but I get it out there as technocracy.studio. And you can join the mailing list, of course, at technocracy.news. I have a Patreon account too, which is supported by listeners who appreciate some of the work that I'm doing here and want to kind of give a tip or a hat tip or whatever. It's found at patreon.com/technocracy. It's very easy to make just even a small monthly donation. $2 is just as a great encouragement to me personally, just to know that you're standing with me on this. It's been a lonely road. You can imagine over the last many years, it's been a lonely road talking about technocracy when nobody really knows what you're saying. And people are finally starting to get it. This is just a wonderful thing. We need to keep this rolling along. So please do share this video with everybody you know. Put it out on social media, wherever they'll take it and won't censor it. Just get busy. We got work to do, my friends. We'll see you next time. God bless.